Welcome to another week of Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamen Enchev. Joining me, Tom Castleman, Drew Brackett, back from presumably celebrating the Bucks championship. We'll have more on that later in the show. Plus the opening weekend of the Olympics. A lot of good stuff going on, football talk, and much, much more, guys.
Yeah, Drew getting to pour out a little bit of bubbly for a team long time coming. Also going to be touching on some college football as well. Of course, the NBA Finals as well as Olympic basketball. And then MLB trade deadline coming up. I don't know if there's a single thing that we're not going to be touching on in this show. It's going to be jam-packed for sure.
Yeah, still recovering from that Bucks parade, but of course, glad they won. We'll start out with the Olympics, guys, going on right now. Common, what stood out opening weekend for you?
Yeah, the race of the night was last night. Katie Ledecky against Titmus, the Australian swimmer, in the 400-meter gold race. What an absolutely crazy race. Ledecky, of course, jumps out in front, led for about the first 300, 350 meters, and then Titmus comes racing back, chases her down, and beats her at the end, completely dominating the final 50 meters. And that's going to be an incredible rivalry for Olympics to come. Titmus, just 20. I think Ledecky's 24. It's the first Olympic individual race Ledecky's ever lost. She was perfect in the individual races in 2016. Titmus beat her at the 2019 Worlds, and now she beat her at the Olympics. And if you had a chance to look at her swimming coach, he went absolutely nuts. That was crazy. I'll give you one more in the pool before I give you guys a chance to talk because I got a few other things. But the USA 4x100 meter freestyle relay winning gold was a big deal. That's one of the highlight races of the Olympics. And to me, actually, Caleb Dressel is supposed to be the big American star, and he is a star. He did great. But let's give a shout out to Zach Apple, the anchor. He swam the fastest leg, 46.06 there at the end. He was the best. He's just phenomenal as the lead anchor. So a lot of credit goes to him. USA dominating in the pool as usual there. A great start for them.
Yeah, the big takeaway from me was a little bit of a wake-up call for casual American sports fans. Hey, America, your favorites aren't necessarily going to win every single race. I had that shock comment, as you mentioned, Katie Ledecky's race, where watched her run in one of the earlier heats, basically pulled away from the field after it was kind of close in the first, stretch or two, the first 50 to 100 meters. And then just as the race goes on, she just pulls away when everybody else kind of fades. And that started to happen in this race. I said, she's got it about 250 meters in. And then Ariane Titmus, to her credit, ran or swam an incredible last couple legs of the 400 free. Basically, the way it came down was at first it's kind of like, oh, is that disappointing for Katie Ledecky? And basically, she swam her best time in that event since she set the Olympic record back in 2016 in Rio 5 years ago. So basically, it wasn't that she came up short, is that she just got beat. And that was an incredible race to watch. Of course, we're going to be talking about USA men's basketball a little bit later on in the program, but also women's gymnastics for the U.S. team with superstar Simone Biles qualifying for the all-arounds. But as a team, I believe they qualified second. Out of everybody. So basically, it's a little bit of a wake-up call where we kind of have these nice storylines going in, knowing Simone Biles, Katie Ledecky, USA basketball kind of going in as favorites. That might not be the case. It's going to be definitely very hotly contested in this really crazy Olympics where there are just so many different variables at play. We'll be talking about a lot of that later in the show.
Yeah, Drew, what do you have? Because I have exactly what Tom said and a couple other things. But did you get a chance to catch some Olympics? I know you were a former swimmer. What stood out to you?
No, it's always nice to watch the swimming, of course, but I really like watching the morning events, having coffee and breakfast and watching the Olympics. That's always fun. What about you, Common?
Yeah, for me, I have it written down. Things don't go as well as expected and things are tough. It's kind of what Tom was talking about. We had Katie Ledecky actually lose an individual race. We talked about USA men's basketball losing to France. We'll have more on that in a little bit. Also, how about the USA women's soccer team? They had a 44 game unbeaten streak that was snapped, and really a lot of shocks early on in the Olympics. So that's exciting though, because you never know what's going to happen. And these American teams get their wake up call early on. I do have a few other things too I do want to hit on, though, is, of course, the USA softball team, undefeated right now. They're going to play Japan in the gold medal game. That's a cool story for me. Also, USA 3-on-3 ladies, 3-on-3 basketballs in the Olympics. They're doing quite well, undefeated and in the semis. And how about a few stories outside of the American team? Gymnast Oksana Trusi Vitina, competing in her 8th Olympics at 46 years old. She's the oldest gymnast to ever compete in the Olympics. You know, there's girls that are out there that are still literally teenagers. She's old enough to be their mom, and she's out there competing. Really cool to see that happen. She said it's going to be her last Olympics. And of course, I think a real cool story for the Japanese team, the home country, the Abe brother and sister combo, both winning gold in the judo. So that's kind of a neat storyline there. And how about Luka Doncic last night? I stood up late to watch him play. 48 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks as Slovenia beating Argentina in basketball. So a lot of really fun things going on. I'm certainly looking forward to a lot more of the competition. I know we'll talk about the gymnastics team in a second. I have a lot to say about them and a lot to say about Simone Biles, who actually, for her standards, just like Katie Ledecky, maybe didn't deliver what we expected. One more note on that swimming race, Tom. You said Ledecky swam great. She did. In that race, we had the second fastest time in the history of the 400 meters, which was done by Titmus, and the 4th fastest by Ledecky. The other fast was Titmus at the 2019 World. So yes, Ledecky swam her second fastest race ever, and she's got 7 of the top 10 fastest races in the history of the 400 meters. It just was just not quite good enough. Just a wild race for me.
Absolutely. Well, kind of moving into some of the main events as far as gymnastics go with the women's team, we can just kind of dive into that with Simone Biles qualifying for all 4 event finals, but of course coming up a little bit short from the prelim section. Drew, what are your thoughts on this in terms of, is this just a little bit of nerves? Is this something that they can recover from, or should they be legitimately worried about gold?
I mean, obviously the gap's a little smaller this year, but I think they'll be fine. Biles will figure it out, and the U.S., they'll be fine. They'll figure it out. Comment, what do you think?
Yeah, I had a few notes on that. This was actually the worst score Simone Biles has had in the all-around since 2018, and she was coming back from an injury back in 2018, and it's the first time in 10 years the USA ladies hadn't been in first place after the opening round at a major competition. So really crazy to see them struggle, but part of it was Biles because her scores weren't quite where they were. If they were higher, they would have been on top of the Russian team. I still think they don't have a ton to worry about because she was still first in the all-around, and Sunyu Lee was 3rd, actually. So they've got 2 girls who have a chance to finish 1-2 possibly if things go very well for them. And as far as Biles, that tells you how great she is. She had her lowest score in 3 years. She didn't really perform well for her standards, and she was still top 8 and top 2 on the USA at all 4 events. Still first place in the all-around. As far as which 4 can she win, I think she's definitely going to win the vault and the floor. Those are hers. But for her, I think for it to be a success, especially given her slow start, she must win the balance beam. The balance beam has kind of been her downfall in recent years. She had the 2016 Olympics. She got bronze on that. The U.S. trial, she fell on the beam. And in this event, the prelims in the Olympics, she took 3 steps off the beam and didn't get as good of a score as she wanted. The bars is probably her worst event. It's the one she won't be favored to win. So I think if she wins 2, it's okay. If she wins 3, success. If she wins all 4, then massive success, obviously. And I think she's going to win the individual all around. And I do think the USA ladies are also going to win the team title. A little bit of concern for them not playing as well as they normally perform, but not terribly so. But I have said this constantly. It's the year of the underdogs in sports this year. So nothing would shock me. Certainly it's going to be a fun all around to watch tomorrow night or tomorrow morning, depending on if you watch it live, if you watch the tape.
Mm-hmm.
I am excited. The swimming, though, is at least live. So I didn't find out what happened in the men's team final, which I think was this morning. Prime time is going to be tonight. Don't tell me what happened. I'll be keeping my eyes
I was
on
just about
that
to
as
offer
well.
that.
Yeah, no, don't offer it to me. I'm going to be watching tonight with my mom. It's our tradition, gymnastics and the Olympics.
Fantastic. No, I think that I'm not terribly concerned about the USA women's gymnastics team. I mean, outside of Simone Biles, these are all fresh faces that we haven't seen on the Olympic stage before. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if there are a little bit of nerves. Yes, they're used to competing at Worlds and at the qualifiers, but the Olympic Games is just a little bit different. It hits that little bit of a chord, something that hit me as I was watching this weekend, just listening to the NBC theme for the Olympics. There's something different about this event in particular. I think that this is a nice little wake up call, basically telling Team USA, like, hey, you're not invincible. There is a very good chance that if you are not on point, if you're not locked in, we're going to be taking home a lesser shine on our medal than we're expecting to, than we're wanting to. As far as Simone Biles goes, I mean, Common, you and I talked about this last week. I mean, I think she's one of like the great Olympians all time, despite the fact that she's only been in one Olympics so far. I think that this is her opportunity. This is her moment, her year, or I guess set of years. It's kind of like a leap year thing for her to take her dominance on the world stage to a whole nother level with the Olympics and go for winning, 3 individual golds in separate events, to clarify. I mean, it would be probably like one of, if not the greatest performances if somehow she is able to win gold in all 4. I think that at the very least, medaling in all 4 is something that's pretty doable for her.
Yeah.
But bigger picture, I'm not concerned at all about USA women's gymnastics. I'm looking forward to them having a pretty tight competition with the Russian Olympic Committee.
ROS. Yeah.
ROC, whatever it is.
ROC or ROS.
Russia,
because of Russia's doping scandal, they can't be called Russia for this Olympics. Just like the last Olympics, too.
Because that's a real big punishment for Russia.
Right.
It's going to be thrilling stuff to see. It's going to be a great rivalry throughout. I do feel pretty confident about USA gymnastics, ignoring the thing that I said earlier in the show about not getting carried away with the favorites.
Sounds good.
Moving on to hoops, guys. USA basketball, men's basketball, I should say, lost to France. What's wrong with them, Common? You think they got a chance to win the gold still?
It's getting closer and closer to 50-50. I was at like 60-40. I was at 55-45. Now I'm about 50-50, I tell you, Drew. What's wrong with the team was summed up in the last minute of the basketball game. USA with the close lead there. France fights to the loose ball, beats the Americans to the loose ball, gets a crazy 3, takes the lead. Then the U.S. down 2 with about 30 seconds left. They get 3 wide open looks. Zach LaVine, Kevin Durant, Drew Holiday all missed wide open 3-pointers. As a team, they shot 10 of 32 from 3, really poor. Durant was 1 for 6. Lillard was 1 for 9, I think, on threes. It summed it up because this American team seems to be stuck at the 3-point line. They seem not to be hitting their shots, and they seem not to be having the hustle plays. And a true great team makes adjustments. America's team is very, very athletic. There is no team in the world. I mean, you got Kevin Durant and Zach LaVine on the court at that moment, 2 of the most athletic guys in the NBA. Take the ball to the hoop. You haven't been hitting your shots. Why are we shooting 3-pointers? Make an adjustment. Evan Fournier, who's a decent role player, he shouldn't be scoring 28 points on you. Get up in his face. The guy's not athletic enough against these USA guards. Are you kidding me? America needs to just realize, like Tom says, same as the gymnastics team, same as Katie Ledecky, same as the soccer team, you are not invincible, and you can't just lackadaisically play because you're not just going to win by doing the same thing. They have great shooters, but every once in a while, the ball doesn't go in the hoop, and you have to use your athleticism. I mean, Damien Lillard, all he was doing was shooting threes. It almost makes me feel like these guys are almost scared of an injury. They don't want to go up in the contact. We're comfortable shooting the ball at the 3-point line. I'll have a lot more on them in Statement of the Week, but they got to play with some heart. This team is not playing with heart. They need to go in and play some bully ball. Use your size, use your athleticism, get to the paint. Get to the paint, dunk the ball. You're America. You should not be just settling for three-pointers if they're not going in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would wholly endorse some volleyball, but outside of literal Bam Adebayo, they don't really have much big man size on the team. They have a lot of length and athleticism, as you mentioned, with Kevin Durant, but his game isn't going down into the post. His game is working that mid-range and long-range shots in the half court at the very least. Of course, very athletic, getting to the rim, especially in transition. I mean, there's any number of a litany of excuses that we can use for Team USA, and I think that they are a little bit more apropos this particular year than any Olympics prior. Let's consider the fact that the USA men's basketball team, none of the players on it have had a normal off season in 2 years since 2019, before the pandemic. Of course, we had the shutdown in 2020. Then they came back for the bubble. Then they
a lot of the other countries are facing the same issues, though. A lot of these other players are NBA players, and a lot of them in their countries also face the same issues. This isn't just these American guys. We got to stop making excuses. They have the most talent. They have to win these games. There are no excuses.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, these are some of the reasons why they're not doing as well as they should be doing. Especially when you consider that 3 of the 12 players on the roster just came off of playing in the NBA Finals, literally playing some of the best basketball of their life just a couple days, and then flying out to Tokyo halfway across the world. I think that, they're tired, they're disjointed. And also, let's keep in mind that they haven't really sent the true best of America. We don't have Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Steph Curry.
James Harden.
James Harden. Perfect example, Kyrie Irving. We have any number of players. You can almost make a better Olympic basketball team with the guys who have not gone than the guys who have. So I think it's kind of this confluence of
Tell me this, that Evan Fournier, who scored 28 points on France.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
He would be a bench player on this USA team.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm just saying that this isn't the best men's basketball team that we've seen all time. This isn't a team that set out to win the gold. This is kind of shaping up a little bit more like that 2014 with Larry Brown as the head coach, where this is good NBA talent. And keep in mind, with good NBA talent, you still have 7 to 9 of the best players on the court at any given time. I'm not disagreeing with any of that at all. I'm just saying that perhaps if they had a couple different guys who were going instead, if we're replacing, say, Zach LaVine with LeBron James, that makes a massive difference. So that's where I'm thinking USA is coming up a little bit short. Why they're coming up a little bit short. They just don't have the cohesion. They don't have a great mix of player available. And they've just had too many people drop out. Kevin Love, Bradley Beal, guys that aren't necessarily international superstars, but they were on the team and then they weren't.
Bradley Beal's pretty good.
And somebody thrown in as a replacement. So there's a lot of excuses for the USA men's team that are available. I don't think that they should be using any of them. But from an outside observer, I can understand a little bit why this year is different in its disappointment than other years, if that kind of makes sense.
I agree with you that this isn't the best roster, but I think a big problem is leadership. They don't have a leader on this team. You look at, the 08 Redeem team. They had a mature LeBron James. They had Kobe Bryant. They had Dwayne Wade. These were guys who led teams, who made the best, got their players to play at another level. And they don't have that. I mean, Kevin Durant is the best player on this team, and he's a phenomenal player. But sometimes I do question Kevin Durant's leadership. I actually questioned it at OKC, how a lot of times at OKC, he was fine with letting Russell Westbrook take the shot at the end of the game. No, you're Durant. You're the man. You got to take the shot at the end of the game. And that's really been a criticism of him. Can he lead a team? Because obviously with Golden State, they had the most talent. They won the championship. If they didn't win the championship, it was a disappointment. And that's kind of where they are right now. I think this is really big for both Durant and Lillard's legacies, because they're both looked as guys. Lillard hasn't won anything. Durant hasn't won anything where he's been the hands down one guy that you need to focus on. So I do question some of their mentality. I do question some of their toughness. I do think if LeBron James was on the team, I don't think LeBron James is going to let those guys lollygag as much as they do. And you mentioned James and Davis. Yeah, they would be able to get him some easy paint points. I agree they don't have a ton of forwards, but Durant actually is underrated going to the basket. He doesn't do it a ton, but he does do it sometimes, as does Lillard. And they're going up against, in theory, is weaker competition than what they see day in, day out in the NBA. I think those guys got to be able to put their head down and go in for a layup and get an easy bucket, because if they don't win the gold, it is a disappointment. It's embarrassing, and it's just America's the best at basketball. That's what people associate American sports with. They're going to embarrass themselves and they're going to embarrass their country, and they need to get it together, because this is inexcusable. Basketball is a game where there's a lot of scoring going on. It's not like soccer, it's not like swimming or track, like where a couple moments make the difference. You have so many moments within a game, and these guys need to utilize. I do think if I was picking, I would say I'm like 50.1% sure they win the gold. But I'll tell you this, look out for Slovenia and Luka Doncic. Doncic has never lost a major international competition with Slovenia. He won the Eurobasket in 2017, undefeated in qualifying, dominated a good Argentina team. So if not for the U.S., look out for Slovenia as a possible gold medal favorites.
Absolutely. Drew, how do you feel about the USA basketball team?
Well, just remember, the game is so much different than the NBA, right? You can't just jack threes and not play defense like in the NBA and expect to win. So, the game's just so different. You're not getting superstar calls. All these guys are superstars in the NBA. They're just kind of looking at the refs, and they're not going to call it. They don't know. They don't care. So, you got to figure things out if you're the U.S.
Do you think they're going to figure it out, guys, or is this just like too little, too late for them?
I mean, if they decide to not treat it like an all-star game, yeah, absolutely. But got to play some D.
And the problem, actually, their defense wasn't even the major problem in the last game. It was their offense, and that's the sad thing.
One would say that good defense leads to good offense.
Sure, they can use the athleticism in transition.
But they're just jacking threes.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying. They need to play some type of like basketball. It seems like they're playing sort of on the playground, and they need to get it together, because this team has enough talent to win this thing. And Lillard said something like, these international guys are way better than when we see them in the NBA. And guess what, Lillard? You're way worse. So get it together, buddy, because Damien Lillard is playing horrendous. I know Tom really likes him, but, I mean, he's playing some really, really bad basketball, just an absolute horrendous game. He has to be better. He has to be better. There's no question about it. I mean, he has to be better. He can't miss all the threes and not even like try to do anything else. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful they'll win, but I'm not confident they'll win. It could go either way.
Well, there you go. We'll move on to the NFL, the gridiron. Aaron Rodgers, Packers saga. Tell me what you got. What happened?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I was actually at a minor league baseball game on Saturday, and I was in the bathroom, and I heard them talking about it on the radio. And at the time, Saturday, they were talking about how Rodgers might retire. And I'm talking to a Bears fan. Oh, man, this would mean big news for the Bears. Don't wish injury upon anyone, but this is like sort of like a best case scenario. And then now, all of a sudden, just within the last few hours, Adam Schefter breaking the news. Again, this is not 100% official, but if Adam Schefter is tweeting it, there's got to be some sort of like credence and accuracy to it. Basically, to kind of sum it up, they're sort of agreeing to a deal with Rodgers for this year, and they're going to void his contract in 2023. So the Packers are essentially saying, hey, Aaron, if you come back for this next year, we'll let you leave the following year. We won't make you have to stay one more year. And this is actually sort of like a win-win for both sides, because I think that these two sides are not going to be together long-term, but it's also so close before the season for Green Bay to figure out a new quarterback, and also really close to the season for Rodgers to figure out a new team. But this isn't surprising. I think Rodgers is going to be gone after this season, and quite frankly, I don't blame him. There seems to be a lack of communication between the Packers organization, the Packers coaches, and Aaron Rodgers. It seemed like he didn't know about Jordan Love. And we talked about this in the NFL season. They've never drafted him a first-round pick on the skill side of the offense. The only guy he had was Mercedes Lewis, who's like 37, and they didn't draft him originally, and he's kind of a backup tight end for them. So this is a team that was one game away from the Super Bowl with the MVP quarterback. Had they gotten him another receiver, had they gotten a defensive player, maybe they're in the Super Bowl and we're not talking about this. Also on that fourth down against the Buccaneers where they kicked the field goal instead of going for it, it seemed like Rodgers expected them to go for fourth down. There was no sort of agreement with him and the coaching staff. So it's just a messy saga altogether. I do think there's also just something about Aaron Rodgers that rubs me wrong. It seems like he's just a phenomenal player, but he's not necessarily a great leader. I've heard, rumblings about that. Doesn't necessarily make his teammates better. Given all his talent and, the winning seasons they've had, you'd think by now Green Bay would have several Super Bowls, but they've actually only won one with Rodgers. So this is a pretty crazy saga. As a Bears fan, I'm not necessarily too torn up about it, though.
Yeah, I think that this whole deal basically kind of shapes up as a gentleman's agreement that this is going to be the last season for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, which is not insignificant. I mean, he's going to make it to 17 years as quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, something that has not been done either by Brett Favre or Bart Starr, going through the very storied history of the guys on the frozen tundra, which is basically just saying the same thing twice. I think that, it's probably the best move all around. I mean, looking at different teams around the NFL this year, not very many teams have the salary cap space to add Aaron Rodgers and his contract, especially in a year where the cap has actually gone down due to the pandemic, as opposed to previous years where it typically goes up a decent percentage. So basically, this just seemed to be the way that they were able to bring him in. We heard rumors that the Packers tried to make him an offer that would have made him the highest paid quarterback on an annual basis, and he turned that down. Basically, at this point, Aaron Rodgers is just saying, I'm done with Green Bay. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do the best that I can because I know that's going to get me someplace else next year or somebody that actually might value me more than picking a quarterback in the first round. Well, I still have 3 years left on my contract. I'm 36 years old at the time. Like, look at Tom Brady. He's playing and he's 6 years older. There's no reason why Aaron Rodgers can't play to his, 40-year-old age or maybe a little bit beyond. So I think the Packers just made a whole big mess of this when they didn't have to. And they didn't leave themselves with very many contingency plans for getting out of it. So this is where they are. It's going to be an uncomfortable season up in Green Bay, but we'll see how that goes.
And I'll tell you this, I think it's a little bit different than the Favre situation because when they drafted Rodgers, to be Favre's replacement,
Sure.
I do think that there was rumblings of Favre retiring soon. There's been nothing about Rodgers retiring until this whole saga happened. We see guys play until longer. I do think, once Rodgers' contract is about to run up, maybe when he's on the last year or maybe after it runs up, Jordan Love, they should have been looking for a quarterback 2 to 3 years after they were. They were doing this too soon. And they need Rodgers even more than he needs them because you saw what happened, the few times he's been injured. They went from a playoff team to a team that's been below 500. He is as important to them as just about any player in the league. That's why he's the reigning MVP. I mean, I know obviously Patrick Mahomes is very important, a few other guys, but he's, if not the most important, one of the 3 or 4 most important players to their team. Hence why he has 3 MVPs. So I think he matters a lot to them. I do think he's going to do well wherever he goes. But I think if they hadn't messed this up, this would have been beneficial to both sides because now Rodgers is like, I think 37. He's about to turn 38. When they trade him the next year, or not trade, wherever he goes the next season, he'll be 38 going on 39, learning a new system. I think he can do it. I mean, we've seen Peyton Manning go to Denver and succeed. We saw Tom Brady go to the Bucs and succeed. So I wouldn't put it past him, but I think he was not in a bad spot. Instead of trying to improve the relationship, improve the situation in the team, they sort of went a different way. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, they get him out of the NFC North. Fine by me if I'm Chicago. And this could be one of those funny things is, which by the way, imagine if he goes to the Vikings. I remember Brett Favre did that. And he beat up on the Packers the next season in the Monday night game, and they went further in the playoffs. It was sort of like a Brett Favre saying, kind of rubbing it in their face. What if Rodgers rubs it in their face in Minnesota? And that's what's crazy, because for all the success Green Bay has had in the Favre Rodgers era, they only have 2 championships to show for it, which is crazy to think about because, I'm sure most teams will take 2 championships in a 20-year span. But I think given that you had 2 of the all-time greatest quarterbacks, 2 guys who are, 1, 2, top 2 guys in their eras, probably, to not having won one is a disappointment, quite frankly.
Kind of makes you appreciate the greatness that is Tom Brady, after all.
And the luck.
Yeah, the greatness.
The greatness.
Moving on, though, NFL says teams could forfeit possibly and lose game checks if there's an outbreak among unvaccinated players. So, coaches basically all require. It's not required, but they're
It is actually among the coaches. I think it is required. And that's how they let the Vikings let one of their assistants go. It's not required among the players, but it's required among the coaches, which is a whole nother debate in itself.
Now, what do you think about the NFL, with the possible forfeits?
Yeah, I mean, first off, my first honest thought to this, and this is kind of skeptical, probably not a good thought, but I know that, Tom probably had the same thought, and maybe you too, Drew. My first thought was the NFL isn't necessarily looking out for the players' safety. They're looking out for their money and their games happening, because they don't want games getting moved to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, wherever it may be. They want a full season and they want things going right. So that's the first thought that I had, but I think it's good. I think it's good. I mean, I'm not going to get in a whole spiel about COVID. You believe what you want, but I mean, the research shows that being vaccinated, it is scientifically accurate that it helps prevent the disease or helps lessen it if you get it. Now, some people will disagree with science. That's the society we live in. But these players, they have the choice. Heck, if you disagree with science and you want to cost your team a game, you want to cost yourself some money, go for it. You have that right. The NFL hasn't said that we'll kick you out of the league if you test positive. That you're just going to miss the games just like, everyone else. But I mean, I think it's good for the league. I think it's sort of a little nudge in the right way. And just like the players reserve the right not to be vaccinated, the NFL reserves the right to hand down whatever punishment they want. This is, they're the league, and I think this is going to encourage some players to get vaccinated. I don't know about Cole Beasley, what he's going to do, but I think some other players will probably get vaccinated because, I mean, it is a competitive advantage if you think about it. The protocols are different for guys who have vaccines versus guys who don't. And yes, there's not a perfect system. I mean, we live in a world where nothing is perfect. You may get some side effects from the vaccine. There are cases. I mean, nothing is perfect, but on average, it's actually safer for the vast majority of people to be vaccinated. And I think it's good for the league. And I think it would be good so that we play all the games. I don't want to see forfeited and canceled games. No one wants to see that. But the NFL is at this point is saying we want to complete our season as is. We don't want to create messes. And they're trying to do what they can to make sure that happens. And my best bet is that a lot of the players are going to get vaccinated. Like Ezekiel Elliott did, a guy whose family has been against the vaccine. Guess what? Ezekiel Elliott is vaccinated.
Yeah, and you mentioned the NFL owners probably looking after their money. They're also looking after their sponsors' money too, including, DraftKings, FanDuel, the different books that don't want to be taking a number on a game that potentially gets moved around, and all of a sudden they lose complete control of the handle on that. So they're probably looking out for some of their benefactors as well on that. I think this is absolutely the right decision by the NFL. And I wish that we saw this in more facets of just like global life. I mean, I wish other governments, corporations, et cetera, would have similar policies in place, because one of the many things that we've learned over the past 18 months is that pandemic is not good for like 90% of global business, whether it's supply chains, whether it's specific companies or industries. I mean, 2 out of the 3 people on this show were affected by COVID from an economic sense, even though we were both fortunate enough to not suffer any of the health consequences of it. Nobody wants this to continue going on. And the best way to curb it is by having a mostly blanket policy on as many people who are physically healthy enough to get the vaccine to get it. Of course, there are people who are immunocompromised and cannot. We got to protect them too. So great move by the NFL, even if they are a bit heavy-handed with it. And I think that this is just something that shows how the NFL has more power over its workforce than just about any other business or industry in the country, in the world. So I'm all for it, even though I'm typically anti-shield as far as their heavy-handed policies go. I mean, in this case, the end justifies the means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hopefully no games get canceled.
Mm-hmm.
I know Roger Goodell obviously taking his baths and his money, so they do. The NFL does have an influence just because of the amount of money made. It is incredible. They're probably one of the most powerful entities in the U.S.
In the world. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
we'll move on to college football. Oklahoma and Texas wanting to join the SEC. Common, what do you think? Do you like it?
I don't know. That news was kind of crazy, and the whole story behind it is kind of crazy because they were essentially sort of like trying to surprise the Big 12, and the report came down just a few days before. Today's like the day that they kind of said it, and basically there's sort of like an 18-month thing where you have to let them know, and they'll lose some money in the short term if they do leave. You just want to make it clear that this is not going to be for this season. This looks like something that will be the following year or the year after that. I don't know what I feel about it, just because on one hand, I think to myself, it's like, well, we're going to see more really cool games. Can you imagine Oklahoma and Florida? We'll see that more often. Texas and, our Alabama, stuff like that. It actually is also interesting, the recruiting battle that some of those conferences will have. On the other hand, it's like the Big 12 tradition. Oklahoma and Texas are the Big 12. It would hurt for them to lose, them as a conference. So I go back and forth on it. I really, it's like when Mizzou moved to the SEC. At first, I was like anti it because I love the tradition, but now I see the benefits of the SEC, and that's kind of what Oklahoma and Texas are looking at. The SEC is the top dog, and they want to be a part of it. I certainly don't blame them. The Big 12 has a lot of work and a lot of dollars to convince them to stay.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the move. I'm not really a big fan of kind of forming like super conferences. I think there's a lot of great tradition. I'm still a little bit on the fence just from a rivalry perspective of Missouri going to the SEC. Who can we really say is Missouri's big rival at this point? I mean, granted, they've only been in the conference for not even a decade. They made the move when we were wrapping up our show back in college a few years back. But I think that it's kind of disheartening to see that. I think that I think that college football is a better place with Big 12 football being a brand. I think having that balance of Big 10, SEC, Big 12, and then Pac-12, I think that's really, really important. I think with Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, that leaves a lot of good, but not necessarily coastal or name brand teams like Kansas State, which usually puts up a pretty good program every single year. Oklahoma State, which is a bit up and down to be sure. Iowa State, another one. West Virginia's had a couple of good years of recent vintage. So I prefer the Big 12 staying as a conference. I guess I kind of get Texas and Oklahoma chasing the money, trying to go to the SEC, trying to chase a little bit more relevance. But honestly, I would rather they just kind of stay in the conference where they are and just schedule these games as out of conference, exhibitions every couple of years. Get a couple of home and homes with, say, an Alabama or an LSU, or even if you have to go a little bit down because those programs don't necessarily want to play you, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, those are still fun too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all I can say is could be an awkward year or years for Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. It's by the way, to answer your question, Mizzou's rival, yeah, there's not a clear rival. I think South Carolina and Tennessee are probably the two that I think of for Mizzou, having covered the team and seeing what the fan base thinks. I know they're trying to form a rivalry with Arkansas, but I don't know that necessarily has quite worked out. I think
it has to be organic. It has to be, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, making taking a low shot at Blaine Gabbert, twisting his ankle a little bit. It has to be like those types of things that develop over a lot of time. Not saying that it can't happen in the SEC, but even though we see some moves that are better financially or better for a program overall, as far as a transitory kind of fan base, such as college, football students rather, college students, having those rivalries are what bring people into the school and are what really kind of like boost that sort of brand. Nothing drew, better in Missouri than Kansas and Missouri. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, people came for the novelty of Alabama and Missouri, and then they left when it was 45-0. Like that sort of thing isn't very fun.
And something to think about too is like, this is, obviously more of a football move than anything. I think if you think of like a program like Oklahoma and even Texas, to a lesser extent, but Oklahoma has been getting into a lot of these college football playoffs as the Big 12 representative. I think their chances of actually making the playoff would, in theory, go down by joining the SEC. And Oklahoma and Texas are
they'd be counting on expansion for sure. Right. I think that'd be kind of like a handshake move, like we're all going to push for the same thing.
Right, but still, I still think their chances would still go down though, because if they have what are we talking about? 12 teams is the last thing they were talking about. So I mean, you might have like possibly 4 from the SEC, but what if Oklahoma finds them 5th in the SEC? I mean, there's seasons, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, and all of a sudden you're in that 5th slot where you could maybe be 1 or 2 in the Big 12 and have it guaranteed. I mean, that is something to think about. I do think this though, Oklahoma and Texas are such big brands that I don't know that joining the SEC really helps them grow their brand. I do think maybe it helps them get some dollar bills. But their brand are so big that in terms of growing its name, it would only increase a little bit, if at all, because if the programs all of a sudden aren't winning as much, you could actually decrease your brand, like I said. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely monitor that situation because it'll be a while until anything officially happens. So we'll move on to the association NBA. The Bucks won the finals. How about that, guys? They were down 2-0. Did the Bucks win it, Common, or did the Suns choke?
Good question. I think it's a combination of both. I do think that the Suns didn't play that bad in Game 5 when they were at home. I do think when they got up 2-0, as Tom likes to say, the series doesn't start until you win a road game. So losing 2 games in Milwaukee isn't necessarily that bad. And losing Game 5, I mean, like, part of it was the Suns' defense, but more of it was honestly the Bucks' big 3. You had Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis all have 25 or more. They all shot the ball over 50%. The 5th time ever we've had 3 guys in the finals all have 25 or more and shoot over 50%. The first time since 1985. I mean, it was a historic Game 5 for their big 3. Drew Holiday, 27 points, 13 assists. I mean, that was the best game of his life for Drew Holiday. So I don't know that the Suns necessarily lost that Game 5, but I do think when you're up 2-0, you do have to get some blame. I think something that the Suns didn't do is they didn't make adjustments. Giannis is a phenomenal player. I mean, he's one of the all-time greats. He's going to do great, but they didn't make any adjustments on him. The fact that he scored 50 points, the most in an NBA Finals closeout series of all time, the most points he had in that series in the last game, they got to double or triple team. They got to make some sort of adjustment to limit him a little bit. They're not going to stop him, but they need to do something to limit him a little bit. And quite frankly, they didn't get that done. And I do think Chris Paul had to take more shots. That's an adjustment that Tom and I called for last week. He ended up getting about 22 a game in the series, which is pretty good. But the guy shot 55% from the floor, 52% from 3. He actually was making a high percentage of his shots. He needed to be scoring at least 25, 26 points for them to win the finals. And he kind of played the way he's always played. Score the ball, but also be a great assist guy. But on that stage, he had to take his game to the next level, which is what Giannis did, which is what Holiday did, which is what Middleton did. And Booker held his own for Phoenix. Some of the blame has to fall on CP3. So I say it's a mix of both. I think Phoenix could have done better, but I give the Bucks a lot of credit for playing really well, and I give them a lot of credit for that Game 5 road performance. Because if Phoenix were to win that Game 5, which was a 4-point game, by the way, they might have won the finals. Things might have looked very different.
Yeah, I think it's more about the Bucks winning the series than the Suns losing the series because, I mean, we looked at a couple of these games later on, and it wasn't as if the Suns played especially poorly as an entire team. I mean, certainly different players had slightly off nights, but we had Devin Booker going for 40 plus. We had, Chris Paul taking a lot more shots in Game 6, which ultimately wasn't a failed effort to win a title or to extend the series for a chance at winning a title. I mean, this is all about something that you said, Common, where was the Bucks' big three showing up. It was Drew Holiday, despite not having his best offensive game about him, still having the highest plus minus. It's not the best stat, but the highest plus minus of any player in the NBA Finals, showing that with
you're like hockey stats.
Yeah, it just
I'm
shows
just kidding.
like
It's a good stat.
It's not a perfect stat, of course, because he was a bit of a negative shooting the ball, but it was still about, setting the tone with getting the offense in rhythm at the very least with passing, as well as some of the defensive plays they made. I mean, he had a block shot on the 7-foot-tall DeAndre Ayton at one point in the series. It was just an insane series for him. And of course, as we're going to move into just in a little bit, Giannis having an all-time great series. For me, this one was more about the Bucks winning it and overcoming an 0-2 deficit than it was about the Suns having a 2-0 lead and just kind of letting it dribble down their leg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was
said eloquently.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, the Bucks, I think certainly won that series. Just too much Giannis, played too well, and of course, I was picking them the whole time. You guys just didn't even pick them when it was 2-2 or whatever. So shame on you guys, right?
Let's give some credit to Drew Brackett. I posted on the Salute Your Sports Facebook page. Drew Brackett's roommate was shocked. He thought that Tom posted this or Drew posted this, but I posted on the page, giving Drew his due. He had the Bucks in the preseason. He had the Bucks like midseason, Bucks in pre-playoff predictions, Bucks pre-finals predictions. Drew Brackett was all over the Bucks winning. Now, he did pick them the last couple of years too, but you know what, Drew, give you the credit. You picked the Bucks, and they earned it. They played amazing. I know, I don't want to maybe be the devil's advocate. A lot of things did go their way in the playoffs. I think certainly if we didn't have the Nets injuries, things might have been different. I know they also benefited through injury against Trae Young, but that's part of winning a championship. You got to take advantage of what comes your way, and Milwaukee did that like no one else was able to. So a lot of credit to the Bucks and Giannis. As far as, we'll talk about his overall performance, but what do you guys think about his Game 6 Finals performance? Was it the best performance of an NBA Finals game or closeout game in particular?
I mean, it's certainly up there. It was the crowning achievement of an already astounding series. I mean, as far as individual performances, I mean, we have Michael Jordan putting up 45 to close out the Utah Jazz. I forget if that was the 97 or 98
98, his last game as a Bull.
That was 98. Yeah, that's certainly up there as one of the top performances. It wasn't a closeout game. It was actually Game 1 where the Lakers...
No, it was... Oh, no, the Jordan game was a closeout game. Oh, you're going to
Jordan was close. I'm going to a different game where the Lakers,
sure.
and I believe it was the Celtics, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar injured, and so Magic Johnson almost has a triple-double playing the center position, going from point guard to center. That's certainly up there for an all-time great finals performance as well.
It was a closeout game, Tom. It was Game 6.
Game 1.
No, Game 6. You can look it up, but I have it written down. Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals. Rookie Magic Johnson scores 45 points and grabs, let me see, 13 rebounds, I think it was for him. Just a phenomenal game. 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists as a rookie for the injured Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's between that one, Bob Pettit, and had 50 points in 1958 before the merger. 19 rebounds. For me, the Jordan game, the 45 points, the game-winning shot, the steal at the end, that's number 4 to me. Number 1 is between Pettit, Giannis, and the Magic game you referenced. They're all really close.
Sure.
I lean to knock off Pettit because it was back in the day, lower competition. I didn't physically see the game myself, but I do think the Giannis and Magic is close. Giannis had 8 more points. Magic had 5 more assists. Phenomenal performances by both. It's got to be between those two. double check my stats, but I have it down in my
That
notes.
sounds about right.
1980 Game 6 closeout game, rookie Magic Johnson to win the NBA Finals. I mean, I'd argue the Magic is maybe even a little bit more legendary, but the fact that Giannis got 50 was something. And what was crazy is Giannis shot, like, I think 16 of 17 from the line. I mean, that, like, his free throws were phenomenal in that game. And that's really what was the difference in that game. If Giannis shot free throws the way he had the whole series, you know, the Suns probably win that game, but he was clutch at the line. Give him a lot of credit there.
No, Giannis was really good. Obviously, it is one of the all-time great games in NBA Finals history, and you know, just glad the Bucks won, and happy for Giannis too. I mean, when after you win the championship and you go to Chick-fil-A and order 50 nuggets and then a half lemonade, half Sprite, what a awesome video that was.
Yeah, and I don't think the girl realized who Giannis was.
No idea.
But now she's famous. She's famous.
Well, of course.
He told her 150,000 people are watching you, and I think she like didn't believe him.
Just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't know who he was. No chance.
But as far as like NBA Finals series as a whole, this was also one of the all-time great series by Giannis. I have got it somewhere in the lower half of the top 5 for myself. He was tied for 10th in Finals points. I do think, you know, but you look at his rebounds, 13.2. Only, you know, Shaq, Elgin Baylor, and LeBron have had more amongst those top scorers as far as rebounds. You know, no one has shot a better percentage than Giannis from field goal range, and he plays the defense as well. When I look at the all-time greatest Finals performances, I probably have Giannis as number 4 for me. I look at Michael Jordan at 93. He put up 41 a game. No one's ever done that. Shooting over 50%, had like 8.5 rebounds, you know, 6 assists, 2 steals in that series against the Suns. A 55-point game in the NBA Finals for Jordan. That to me is probably number 1. And then number 2 or 3, it's got to be between LeBron and Shaq for me. You look at LeBron in 99-2000, averaged 38 points and 17 rebounds in the NBA Finals. That's just phenomenal. And then you look at LeBron in 2016-17, 30 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, about 2.5 steals, 2.5 blocks, beating one of the all-time great teams, the 73-9 Warriors. He led the Finals in just about every stat. And maybe I would put LeBron slightly above Shaq, given how close that series was. You know, Shaq and the Lakers dominated the Pacers in that 99-2000 series. Rick Barry and Jerry West have had some all-time great scoring performances in the Finals as well. To me, this Giannis one felt maybe slightly less dominant than LeBron overall, given that LeBron also got a lot more assists. Maybe slightly less dominant than Shaq and MJ, but not far off. It's got to be somewhere in the top 5. I think for sure in the top, you know, 4 in my lifetime, for sure.
Yeah, no, it was a great series all in all. And that was, you know, kind of like one of the hallmark moments is like, who's going to step up? I thought maybe it was going to be, you know, Devin Booker or maybe CP3. I think one thing to kind of keep in mind with, you know, kind of grading Giannis on a curve is that going into game 1, we didn't know if he was even going to be in the series. His season could have been done. His series could have been, you know, slightly delayed if he missed game 1 or even game 2. I think that kind of factors in as well. It's one of the all-time great performances to come back from. I think it was diagnosed as a hyperextended knee.
It was.
And to go from like grimacing and gripping at it all through game 1 and a little bit in game 2 to the point that like, I kind of think I legitimately forgot that he injured his knee by game 3 when the Bucks started their comeback. So I think that kind of factors in as well as one of the all-times as far as an individual performance goes in a team series.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. You know, people forget that, you know, a lot of fans thought he was going to be out for, you know, the entire series and maybe this upcoming season. Who knows? But
Tom was given injury updates in our preview. It was an hour before tip-off. We're doing a show, and we still didn't know whether he would play in the game.
Yeah. I mean, we thought he could be out for a while. So glad he was able to come back and, of course, lead the Bucks to the championship.
Absolutely.
Well, you guys want to move on here to baseball? MLB trade deadline's coming up. What you got, Common?
Yeah, it kind of sneaks up on you. A couple of the moves done so far. I think it was kind of cool to see the Rays get Nelson Cruz, a big bat, given that this is sort of like a rental for them. They've got the lower, one of the lower payrolls. And this, they may not be able to hold on to him next year. But, you don't really see the Rays making moves at the deadline. I think that was cool to see them do that. Adam Frazier to the Padres, that one already happened. That's big for them needing a bat. But in terms of what do teams need to do? I look at the Mets and Brewers as two of the teams that need to get the job done because, the Brewers are third in ERA. The Mets are fifth in ERA with Jacob deGrom. But Milwaukee 14th in runs scored. The Mets 29th. Those are two division leaders in the National League that really no one is really taken seriously because of the Dodgers, Padres, and Giants. But the Dodgers, Padres, and Giants, one of those teams is going to get knocked out after one game, with the NL wild card. So I think the Mets and Brewers as division leaders are contenders if they can get another bat. That's what those two teams need to do. I do think the Yankees, oddly enough, bottom half of baseball in runs scored. Joey Gallo would be huge for them if they can get him with the Rangers struggling. I know the Yankees are not in the playoffs as of right now, but they are in the wild card hunt, and New York always is there. The White Sox, for me, need to add a second baseman. I saw an interesting thing online. Whit Merrifield, the All-Star for the Royals, that would be quite the addition for Chicago. And then, of course, the big storyline I'm following is what's going to happen with the Cubs because they've got Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez. All three guys potentially could get traded. Multi-time All-Stars, players who were huge on their 2016 team, players who World Series team who won a World Series first time in 108 years in Chicago. But all three have underachieved a little bit, haven't met the expectations, but they all certainly have a lot of talent. And Bryant to the Mets is something I've heard, but Bryant to the White Sox, I think, is something else I've heard. That would be very, very intriguing. The trade deadline will be on my birthday, Friday, July 30th, 4 days from now, or 3 days from now, or 2 days from now, depending on when you're listening to the show. But it'll be interesting to see what happens for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, you touched on all of the contenders, and even I don't know if we necessarily want to consider the Yankees a contender on anything except for the fact that they're the Yankees. You touched a lot on those needs pretty well. I think that for me, the big one is the homer pick, the Chicago White Sox. I mean, something to look at is kind of their splits among how they're doing in the division as opposed to outside of the division. American League Central, I think, is pretty easily the weakest division. Well, maybe not pretty easily. I mean, you've got the National League Central that's also fairly weak as well as far as the top contending teams go. The White Sox hired Tony La Russa for one reason only. Jerry Reinsdorf wanted to win a World Series championship with Tony La Russa as his manager. And as presently constituted, the White Sox are perfectly fine and content with just kind of stacking up wins against subpar competition. But looking at how they play against the Astros, looking at how they play this weekend over the Brewers, they could use a little bit more help throughout their roster. I mean, you're going to be going up against aces and twos and threes when it comes postseason time. You're not going to be going up against left-handed pitchers like Mike Minor for the Kansas City Royals every single time that your team's going out. So you got to add
during locks of the week.
You have to add on to that now. I think that I mean, the kind of like second child in the second city syndrome that we White Sox fans have is, if we could pick up a utility infielder or a fourth outfielder, that would help. Go for Trevor Story. Go for Chris Bryant. Go for a difference maker in winning in this half of the season. Make a move because next year is promised to nobody. We've seen, as White Sox fans, Eloy Jimenez, who's coming back from a lengthy injury.
That's almost like
he's coming back,
someone.
But he was gone for much of the season. Same thing with Luis Robert. Even though these guys are young and really good, health is guaranteed to no one. Good play is guaranteed to no one. Cubs fans painfully aware of that. So go for it now. I think that the White Sox are probably the team that needs to add the most given their expectations for this postseason.
Yeah, I think the other team that I look for is the Padres too, because the Padres, like the White Sox, have a ton of talent. And the Padres, like the White Sox, are very close. They're both, it seems like, one or two players away potentially. I do think what you said about the White Sox is a genuine concern because they've beat up on all the bad teams and they've struggled against some of the good teams. So that'll be interesting to see. The Red Sox, also another team that's kind of shocked everyone. It seems like they're probably, a couple players away as well. A couple names, we talk about the Cubs guys. Craig Kimbrell, the closer for Chicago, is being mentioned to a bunch of these teams. A lot of these teams are potentially going to get him. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited for the trade deadline. Excited to see what happens. But I 100% echo what you're saying, Tom. If we've learned anything during COVID, or if these NBA playoffs have taught us anything with all the injuries, you gotta live in the moment. And if you have a team that you think has a chance to win it all, forget the future. Get your guys now and do what you can to win a ring.
Drew, what do you think your Mets should be doing? Your adopted team after the Yankees in the Bronx, or no, they're not the Bronx. They're the
Citi
other
Field,
one.
I think, unless they changed it.
I forgot their borough. I'm awful.
Who knows? Well, it appears they're in first place, so don't need to make too many moves since you're in first if you're the Mets.
They got to hit, though, man. They're not hitting the ball.
Sure. Call up David Wright from wherever he is. Give him a shot. He'll give you some hits.
If his back can take it, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, Mike Piazza, call them around. But, yeah, I mean, the Mets, they're looking good. Trade deadline, I know, Common, you'll be all over it Friday on your birthday. You'll be monitoring Twitter and Buster Olney and Jeff Passan and those guys.
Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see.
But yeah, that's all I got for the baseball here.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up next week with the moves that actually do happen. I always find the trade deadlines interesting in every sport because it always seems like we wait right up to the deadline on Friday, like with an hour to go, is when a lot of these things get done. So it'll be interesting.
The fax machines are working.
That's right. As long as the fax machines are working. So we'll see what happens, but I am looking forward to it. I'm a Cubs and Sox fan, so I've got teams on opposite sides here. The Sox who are buyers, the Cubs who are sellers. And yes, I'm from Chicago and I like both baseball teams. And yes, it's okay. It's not a problem. So
he also puts ketchup on his hot dogs.
And that is wonderful.
Yeah.
People who don't put ketchup, the worst thing about Chicago, other than the violence, is those people who don't put ketchup on their hot dogs. Ketchup is the greatest condiment in the history of condiments. It makes everything better. I am
barbecue
team ketchup.
Sauce?
I like ketchup better. Maybe. Barbecue sauce and sour cream are the only ones that compare.
I think nowadays, if I have a hot dog, I put everything except ketchup, including coleslaw, chili, and mustard.
Add that ketchup, man. Makes it better. Patrick Mahomes will agree with me. I'll tell you that much. At least I got Mahomes back in me.
Isn't he a big steak sauce guy?
No, he puts ketchup on his steak.
Oh, he puts ketchup on everything. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Right.
That's Mahomes. He's my boy.
I forgot the commercials. Oh, I guess it is ketchup in that commercial.
Great minds think alike. Patrick Mahomes and Common Enchev. Meanwhile, Tom is just fully disgusted over there.
As Tom should be.
I love it.
Oh, what do we have next? I have nothing.
Locks of the week. How'd we do last week?
Oh, you know what?
I'm sure I had an awful week with a 2-1 week or something.
Not great, Bob.
You know what? I think I'm just gonna skip the recap. It was that
ugly. No. We earned the recap. Let's roll with it.
Roll it.
We take our plaudits and laurels. We'll take our beatings too.
All right. So a lot of times when the show, it seems like we go in streaks. At one point, we were all doing really well, and we had 3-0, 2-1 weeks. 8-1 for the show. We had a 1-8 week combined on the show. 1-8. And Drew, you were the lone win. You're last place in our standings. Tom and I around 500. Drew, you're kind of way in the back, but you're actually back in the race. You got the one game that you got right, which is the one that I thought was the most ridiculous. Qatar and Honduras under 2.5 goals. That ended 2-0. You had USA women's and Sweden soccer under 2.5. 3-0 to Sweden. And your Iran Czech Republic pick, Iran much better than he thought. Minus 17.5 Czech Republic. Iran only losing by 6. Tom and I went for some baseball. We both missed out on the Astros-Indians game. We had the Astros winning by 2. They won by 1. I had, the Rangers over the Tigers. That was a miserable pick. A blowout win for Detroit. And I had the Angels over the A's. The A's winning 4-1. And Tom had Reds over Mets. It was 15-11 Mets. I should have bet the over, whatever it was. I know it hit over for sure. And the Sox, which I told him he was going to be wrong on this one. I should have just picked it on the show. We had the Twins beating the Sox 5-3 in game 2 of the doubleheader. I had the Sox winning. The Sox did win that game. Nonetheless, probably the worst week in show history. Let's see if we can rebound this week. Let's start with Mr. Brackett, short and sweet.
Yeah, a bunch of homer picks for me this week. Olympics, we'll start with the women's 3-on-3 hoops. Tuesday morning, USA minus 5.5 over Japan. Then we'll go to 5-on-5 women's hoops Tuesday morning. USA minus 30.5 over Nigeria. And then men's hoops, US minus 41.5 is what I saw over Iran Wednesday morning.
Can they win a game by 42 points? Man, I don't know about that one.
Depends on how angry they are.
Donkulous line, so I'll take the favorites.
You think they'd be angry after the 2 exhibition losses, but that didn't come to fruition. I'm just saying, I'll take Iran plus the 41.5 or whatever.
Yeah, that's such a big number. I might be inclined to agree.
Yeah, that's just an enormous number. So we'll see. Tom, what? You know what? I'll go ahead. Actually, no. Let's go with Tom. What do you have, Tom?
Sure. So I am going to go with Monday night. The Chicago White Sox are minus 123 on the run line against the Kansas City Royals. The Royals don't hit Dallas Keuchel particularly well, and the White Sox love to beat up on left-handed pitching. Mike Minor is a left-handed pitcher, so I will go ahead and take the White Sox. They juiced out Mike Minor's under. It was at minus 130 for 5.5 Ks. It's now minus 160, I think. So sharps got to us before the show started, so I can't go with that one. I'll go ahead and take on Monday night the Astros to cover 1.5 runs over the Mariners at minus 120. So another reasonable one there. And then, you know what? I was going to go baseball, but this is just too large of a line. I'll go for Iran to cover 41.5 against USA. I think USA will probably win by 40.
Yeah. I've got USA by less than 40. I'll say 30, 35 maybe. The line is huge. Like, whoa. So, anyways.
You going for that with a lock? Are we going
no,
for
I'm not going to go for.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to go for a show lock. I'll let you guys fight that one out. For my locks of the week this week, I'm going to start with USA Women's Soccer minus 1.5 over Australia. This is going to be Tuesday morning or late Monday night. I guess Tuesday morning overnight. America had their 44-game unbeaten streak snapped against Sweden in their opening game of the Olympics. And boy, was it a wake-up call. The American ladies winning 6-1 against New Zealand. They seem to be back on track. I know comparing opponents is dangerous, but, Australia only beat New Zealand 2-1. America beat them by 5 compared to 1 for Australia. The Australians also losing 4-2 against Sweden. What does that show me? They're vulnerable to allowing a lot of goals. By the way, the last time these two teams played back in 2019, USA won by 5-3. So they won by 2 goals. So that line, by the way, is different. It's the best on Bovada. On Bovada, it's like minus 120. On DraftKings, it's all the way to like minus 145. So if you bet on those two platforms, definitely go to Bovada instead of DraftKings on that line. And then this one, again, I'm going to sneak it in because since we agreed on minus 150 for sure. Our picks, the Angels, I've seen it at minus 150. I've also seen it at minus 145. But for the sake of our show, it counts. We agreed to minus 150 or better. Give me the Angels minus 150 over the Rockies. By the way, as a bonus, if you want better odds, you can get it at plus 130 at minus 1.5. So I would be taking both of those, double down. But for the sake of being more safe on our show, I'll just take the Angel straight up.
It is minus 155 on Bovada. You're getting yours off DraftKings, though, right?
Yes, on DraftKings, I've got it at minus 150. I checked before the show, so I don't know what the update is, but I'll roll with it, and they'll win by 2 anyways, so don't worry, it'll be a mute point. But Shohei Ohtani is on the mound. He's been phenomenal his last 2 outings. Last time out, no runs allowed over 6 innings. In his last 2 outings, over 13 innings, allowed just 2 runs, 8 hits, 1 walk, and 12 strikeouts. And by the way, he's been hitting lately when he pitches too. And we know he hits pretty good. So he's going to give himself some run support, much like he did against the White Sox earlier this season when he pitched and then he hit a home run also. So look for Ohtani to shine for the Angels. And then I have the same one written down as Tom Castleman. This has lately been going well for us. I've got the White Sox. I have it at minus 125 on DraftKings. You had it at minus 123. But either way, within the bounds, Kansas City is very hot. They've got the best record after the All-Star break. But guess what? The White Sox absolutely beat up on teams with weak records. We've seen it all season long. And Dallas Keuchel, by the way, in his last 2 starts, pretty good. 3 runs over 12 innings. He's back on track. And, you talked about the White Sox beating up on lefties. Mike Minor, the Royal starter, he's got a 5.45 ERA. And guess what? His ERA at home is 5.61. So he actually pitches worse at home than on the road. So I take the White Sox to win in Kansas City. So the Angels to win, the White Sox to win, and Team USA women to win by 2 or more. So I don't know if I'll stay up at 3 a.m. to watch that game. I've been going to bed really late lately.
Wake up and check the phone.
Wake up and check the phone. It's gonna be a good game, and that's actually a really important game for the U.S. Because goal differential could make a difference. But it does look like Sweden are probably going to win the group over USA because of that first game. But if the Americans lose this game, all of a sudden they could be knocked out of the group stage. So I think they're going to be motivated to perform and to win big.
Absolutely.
Statement of the week. Please tell me you guys have something prepared.
I mean, I do.
Sure. My salute is to the Japanese robot at halftime during the USA game. That. Just making shots like crazy. I don't think the robot missed. So maybe the robot should be playing for the U.S. He was hitting from the free throw line, 3-point line, and I think even half court.
Impressive.
How is he on moving his feet for defense? Are we there yet?
Not there yet, but he can definitely shoot better than him. So
can't be much worse than the American team so far. They could
maybe
probably
they should
use
bring
him.
back Ben Wallace or someone.
Not the guy who should not be a Hall of Famer, Ben Wallace. That, by the way, is one of our most commented episodes in Salute Your Sports history. Some random person commented on our YouTube page saying how Ben Wallace absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, vehemently disagreeing with me. So that was a fun highlight when it comes to Salute Your Sports.
Absolutely. Well, I, for one, am not accepting of our robot overlords, not yet on that one. My statement of the week goes out to the Cleveland baseball team. They're officially changing their names next year.
So the
Guardians. Going from Indians to Guardians. And I got to say, it kind of feels like a weak move from my perspective. I mean, looking at the logo and the color palette, this smacks of a design team that said, can we fudge things and kind of change our logo without really making the rest of our merchandise obsolete? Kind of defeats the whole purpose of why there was even conversation for changing the name in the first place. I understand that Cleveland has a low attendance fan base that could be driven further away, especially those among them who maybe missed a software update or two on what's acceptable in common parlance today. I mean, Cleveland has been in 20th or lower in attendance every year since 2002, including 2016 when they were in the World Series. They were, I think, like 28th or 29th in attendance that year. So I get why the Cleveland franchise is making this kind of like sideways shift of saying, we're changing our name, but we're kind of trying to stay the same for everybody who doesn't think we should change our name in the first place. I think going with the Spiders would have been a cool move, given that's what they were called back in 1887 to 1899. As they kind of went from, I think it was the American Association to the National League, kind of the early iterations of that in baseball. That would have been a pretty neat move to do. So all in all, the move accomplishes the letter of what it's supposed to do, but it definitely leaves the spirit feeling very lacking.
Yeah, real quickly on the Indians, I got this book from Galena, Illinois on my trip, like, what was it, like about a month and a half ago? And it had like weird like facts of sports and fan promotions. And the Indians have been among the lowest attendance throughout their history of baseball. And Cleveland is kind of more of a basketball football town than it is a baseball town. But I'll tell you this, in that book, they had some night where they had like 10-cent beer night, and like a all-out brawl broke out among the fans. Naked people running on the field. The two teams, there was the Rangers and Indians, started fighting. And the Indians, like the fans, were going to beat up the Rangers because a fan had run out on the field. And they thought that he'd knocked out a Rangers player, but the Rangers player had just tripped instead. So it was an all-out brawl. Look it up. Sometime in 1970. And the Indians manager was like, hey, guys, you got to protect the Rangers players in this fight. The fans against the Indians and Rangers. It's just a wild environment, like several injuries, multiple arrests. So Cleveland doesn't have a very good track record with their decision-making and getting fans in the seats. But yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of agree with you. The Spiders sounds pretty cool, even though I don't like spiders. Maybe you scare away the teams. You do like a special Halloween like promotion like with spiders. There's so many things you can do. I do know that they call them the Guardians because like some statues outside like the stadium were known as Guardians or something. That's how they came up with it. But I mean, I don't know. I guess I agree with you, Tom.
Yeah, it's a Mac kind of thing.
It's a Mac kind of thing. At least give them some credit for coming up with the nickname, Sooner Washington football team. Did they decide what they're going to do?
I think they're just sticking with it for now.
They're just sticking with it.
So anyways, my statement of the week, we've talked about this on the show, but I just, I feel so passionate about it. And I'm going to call them out. I'm going to call out the USA men's basketball team for, quite frankly, embarrassing the country. They are embarrassing the country. There's a lot of excuses. They haven't played together. It's a new game. It's a different game, the international game. They're tired from the NBA season. Whatever it may be, you have, I know there's no Curry, there's no LeBron, etc., but you have by far the most talent of any team in the Olympics. By far. It's not even close. They're sending their B team essentially, and it's miles ahead of every country's A team. They need to get it together. They have the athleticism, the size, the talent, that if the three-pointers aren't falling, they got to go to the hoop. And Damien Lillard, Tom's guy, he's got to take this personally. Damien Lillard has never won anything in his life when it comes to a championship. And now in his international career, he's 2-3 with Team USA. Kevin Durant, he's been a guy known for joining teams. I mean, there's all sorts of memes online. Kevin Durant's joining Nigeria. Kevin Durant's joining Australia. Kevin Durant's joining France. Well, guess what, Kevin Durant? You got to make the haters shut up, and don't do it by creating a burner account. Do it by your play on the field. This is your chance to earn your status. Kevin Durant is looking to be a leader, looking to be the number one player to win a title. Well, why don't you win an Olympic gold medal as the number one guy? Because he is the guy on this team. LeBron James isn't there. Durant is the man on this USA team. He's the man in these Olympics. I know Giannis, a big superstar. He's not in the Olympics. Curry is not in the Olympics. I mean, the only other, guy who has a claim to being the top player in the world in these Olympics is Luka Doncic. And Doncic is playing with, essentially a bunch of nobodies compared to what Durant has. So Durant needs to step up. Lillard needs to step up. These are two of the leading scorers in the NBA. Two guys who are MVP candidates. Durant has won an MVP. Well, they got to play like it. So Durant and Lillard, this is on you. And America, this is on you, because if you don't get the gold, it is a failure. And it would have been different if they had maybe won like all their games and they lose a close game in the championship. But given what we saw in the exhibition tour, given what we saw in, the first group game, this is different. In order for them to redeem themselves from these awful performances, it's gold or bust. And if they don't get it, it's an embarrassment. And that's partly mental and physical strength and emotional strength. You got to have it within you to want to win this, because these other countries, they want to win this. The Americans are good enough to beat anyone if they want it enough, if they're smart enough, and if they're fired up enough inside. And they, this is the Olympics. You're presenting your country on the line. I get it for your legacy. It doesn't mean as much as an NBA championship. And maybe that's why they're playing hesitant. Maybe that's why they're shooting threes. Maybe that's why they're not hustling. But my belief is, if you're going to do something, do it right. So if these guys are going to have pride for their country, they'll win. But if they don't, it shows you that these guys aren't real winners and they don't have real pride. And I'll be disappointed in all of these guys.
There you go.
So anyways, we had a jam-packed show and we got it in. It wasn't like as long as you would have thought. We got our locks in, and we're done in time for Drew to go to bed. And we're done in time for me to watch some primetime Olympic coverage tonight. I don't know what happened in men's gymnastics. Don't tell me, Tom. I'll be looking for that, as well as a lot of really, really good swimming tonight. So we'll keep it tuned to that. And, of course, I'll be tracking my USA women's soccer bet at 3 a.m. in the morning. Look for Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, and company to shine. Have a good night, everyone.